Yeah, absolutely. So, as most people, I never started out in recruitment. I began life as a agent for motivational speakers, and then I moved into more out and out sales for software, actually, and then fell into recruitment around about 10 years ago. I started out with one of the main kind of recruitment companies within property in London, and then after a couple of years, moved with them to Hong Kong, still doing the same thing. And then after a brief interlude as internal talent acquisition for a startup in Berlin, I came back to London and went back into property recruitment. All in out and out billing roles until the beginning of 2020 when I moved again and moved into more of a management role, growing out teams and a division within another business. And then I set up Constable Green at the end of 2022, still in the same space, kind of doing what I know, so placing property professionals within propcos, asset managers and private equity in the main. I think it's one of those things that I had always thought about, but I never really knew where to start, and I was always worried about it being the right time. I also always had a bit of a worry that it was a bit like, selling out, and I'd end up as a one man band in my bedroom like forever, and so it just never really quite happened. It's potentially a little bit of a cliche, but actually, when I returned to work after having my daughter, I just felt like I had real clarity on what I wanted from my career, and what I wanted from my life. And I just wasn't sure that I was in the right place to do that anymore. And when I thought about going to another recruitment agency, it just felt like a bit of a risk to go to the wrong place again. And so at that point, I just decided the kind of potential risk of setting up by myself was outweighed by the reward. Well, I think alongside looking at starting my own business, I looked at kind of other options of where I might move that might give me what I wanted. But then once I kind of decided that I wanted to do my own thing, I started kind of really honing in on what it was I wanted my business to look like and what success for me would look like. Um, and then I did some sums on what I'd actually need to build to keep the lights on. And it wasn't nearly as much as I thought it was going to be. And then it just suddenly became much less scary. And I thought, well, let's just do it. And all the other kind of bits can follow. So first of all, I obviously thought about just doing it entirely on my own. But I'm a recruiter and I'm not so good at admin. So I just really didn't appeal and it just felt overwhelming and I didn't know where to start. I was also really worried that I would do things that would stop me growing in the future if I did it on my own. So then I started looking into some other platforms that do similar things to RecruitHub. But I just felt that a lot of them, you gave up a lot of control of your business, which kind of defied the point of doing it. But also that they were really focused on a growth and an exit. And I was worried that if I did that, I'd get kind of pushed down that route and not grow the business in the way I wanted to do it or in the way that was right for me. And so I kind of parked those ones and ended up at RecruitHub. So I think firstly, I really liked the people that I spoke to, and I'm just a big believer in going with your gut on things like that. But also, I was really impressed with the tech stack and what they shared with me in the process, and so therefore I could really see that it would be an advantage in the space that I work in. And then also, I just think I felt really comfortable with the flexibility on how you can grow your business and the control that you retain. Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure that I'm using it to about half its ability. But what it's doing is just saving me a huge amount of time. It's really improving productivity. And I think therefore I can focus on the stuff that really matters to our clients. And I think it improves that process for them as well. The tech stack is just it's a million times better than anything I've ever had in a large company. So it's just been game changing for me. Um, I think of all the kind of platforms I talked to, RecruitHub were the one where I spoke to like the director soonest, so I got the kind of best overview. So I felt a little bit, I'm sure I was being sold to, but I felt a lot less like I was being sold to by someone who'd been brought in just to do that. So that kind of helped. But also I was shown like what the portal looks like, what the tech looks like really early on, and that could really made me see what the benefits were going to be, because it's all very well and good saying, oh well, someone will do your accounting, you're like, brilliant, I could find anyone to do that, but what about all the other bits that really feed into the recruitment process? And I could really clearly see that straight away. And then again, I think it comes back to what I was saying about kind of working out what you need, what you need to bill in the first 6 months in a year, and kind of doing that forecasting for me made it seem more manageable, but also even now gives me a kind of framework of like, well, actually, look, this is what you need to achieve. Um, so definitely with kind of like, there's always someone there if you need to ask a question. So you don't have to go deep into Google to find the answer to something. It's probably already there or already being done for you. Um, I'm really enjoying the webinars, because I think it's really important when you're on your own, and also when you've perhaps been doing it a while, to have like knowledge sharing and new ways of doing things. Otherwise, you just do everything the same. So that's been good. And being part of a cohort of people where you can kind of throw ideas around, has been really helpful. And then what I really like actually is the quarterly reviews, because it means that you look up from the day-to-day recruitment and trying to bill, and look at like what you're trying to achieve in like the more medium to long term, but also that it's easy to kind of think you've done well or think you've done badly, but actually you can go and do these quarterly reviews and set yourself goals, and then when you look back you can quite easily see like what you've achieved. Yeah, so it's obviously still really early days, but I think the biggest milestone for me was doing my first deals, which happened in February. And actually, February was one of the best months I've ever had in recruitment. So for me, that was just kind of like real proof of concept, and took a lot of pressure off. So I think that's probably my biggest milestone so far. So really, for me at the moment, it's about building the client base and getting really consistent billings happening with repeat business, and then would hope to look to add resource to the business towards the end of the year when the kind of billings support that. It probably sounds a bit woolly, but I just really want to provide a business and a service to our clients that adds value and means that they respect our input. And then when I do grow, I want to provide a working environment for people here that is like fulfilling and lucrative, whether that's someone who's junior and starting off at the start of their career, or also probably a bit one of my kind of pet projects would be for people kind of more at my stage of career who perhaps have kids and are lost for the workforce, and that loses all of the value that they can add and all the knowledge. So that's kind of the kind of big goal. I'm not necessarily entirely sure like what that looks like in terms of scaling, but I do know that that's what I want to achieve, and I'm kind of not going to do anything that undermines that. Um, I guess it's a bit like when people say about marathon running. You just got to break it down into like each mile, and I think you don't necessarily, like I just said, you don't necessarily need to know exactly what it's going to look like in a year or 5 years time, but if you know kind of what your next steps are and set yourself manageable goals, then suddenly it seems a whole lot less scary. Um, so I think actually the first 6 months doesn't look all that different from when you build a desk if you move to a new recruitment company. And so I think most people that are thinking about setting up their own business would probably back themselves to do that. So I think just having that in mind is really useful. And then I think, obviously it's challenging to be on your own. And so I think kind of finding a way to create your own structure, and being clear on how you work best and holding yourself accountable is really important. But that also relates to the pressure you put on yourself, because it's really easy to just keep going as a founder. And I think kind of sitting down and working out what a good day looks like so that you can kind of stop and put the guilt to bed is really helpful, just to kind of make sure that you keep your motivation up. And then finally, it's something that someone said to me who set up a business not in recruitment, which was to just be really diligent about putting in the foundations to grow if that's what you want to do. So like not getting into bad habits that are going to hold you back later. And I think that feels a bit weird when you're sitting on your own, but having that in mind is really useful.